Okay, testing my microphone. Okay, it's working. All right.
Follow the profit, follow the money, follow the profit.
Hi, everybody. All right, so hopefully this is working on, we're on Mormon Enlightenment in Facebook and Instagram and recording for the podcast. So sorry on Instagram if it doesn't look right because it looks like it's not.
Yeah, anybody on Instagram, if you could just drop a comment, let us know if it is turned the right way, if we're appearing.
Are we like, do we look like we're like talking like this?
Are we vertical, horizontal? Are we horizontal because we wanted to be?
Yeah. All right, anyway, we wanted to do a episode kind of addressing some of the things that we've been experiencing lately as far as like conversations with Mormons. We've had some, run-ins and conversations around, beliefs and everything. Overall, I think we are, doing really well and we're in a good space and we're not so much in that argumentative, like attacking stage that we were in for a while, but it's still hard to not voice your opinions at times when certain topics come up. So we're just going to kind of talk about some of our more recent conversations with Mormons and some thoughts that have come up and some, that Sean and I have had together as we've kind of analyzed our conversations with certain Mormons. So yesterday, I'll start by giving you a little backstory around my most recent experience. Yesterday, I did a presentation for a conference for the book publisher that I wrote my book through, which just so happens to be an LDS, or I think they identify themselves as just a Christian-based publisher, and they're local in Utah, and a lot of their books that they publish are from people like the Tattooed Mormon and I can't remember the author of the books, the Book of Mormon Made Easier, and so all of their books usually go into Deseret Book. So surprisingly, they still were willing to publish my book, even though I did mention my faith transition in the story. So anyway, I'm still part of that book publisher, community, and they asked me to speak on time management. So I did that, and then after my part, they took a break for lunch, but everybody stayed on to kind of chat and get to know each other and talk about the different books that all the authors have written. And I kind of was just sitting back and listening in, and a lot of them have written books like that are geared towards Mormons or religion and all of that. And there was this one author there that was talking about his book, and his book was about religion and evolution, or I think it was religion and science, and kind of his interpretation as far as like bringing the two together. So that was really interesting to me, because that's kind of been something that I've been really trying to make sense of, like how can they be not so much religion, because I don't believe in religion anymore, but there's certain parts of like the beliefs that I still want to hold on to. So I'm in my mind trying to see if they can fit science and I guess spirituality or God or whatever. And so I just couldn't help but ask him, I wanted to ask him a question. So he was, I just kind of chimed in and said, hey, I love the title of your book. That sounds really interesting, something that I would be really interested in reading, and I wanted to maybe ask you a couple questions. And then I told them, everybody listening in was kind of listening to our conversation, but I was like, I left the church about 3 years ago, and I stated a bunch of reasons why, and I just was curious to know what he would say around that. And one of the main things that I brought up was how I lost my faith in the power of discernment because of Sean's experience being sexually abused by the man who produced the most recent temple endowment video. And I think you're all familiar with the story. Sterling Van Wagenen, and he's now in prison, and the story was featured on the front page of the New York Times. So it was a big story a couple of years ago, and I was just kind of expressing my disbelief around, you know, these men being called of God, and why would God call these men, you know, known pedophiles to do such work and to be in high callings? Because I said that, you know, as Sean's story came out, a lot of people came to us telling their story, and it just felt like an overwhelming amount of stories similar to Sean's, and these are all from men that were in high callings within the church. So that right there was just like about that, which kind of turned into it kind of turned into a bit of a heated debate, because other people were chiming in, kind of upset with me for even like mentioning that. And so I kind of felt really attacked at that point, because a lot of other people were coming in and saying, you know, how I'm wrong, and yeah, these men are not, you know, they're not perfect and all of that. But I'm like, but still, like, why then? How are we supposed to trust these men if we're to be in that environment believing that these are men called of God? And you know, and so you put in all your trust in them, which I did for a lot of my life. I believed that these men were like the best of the best, and I put all my trust into them, and even down to, you know, their counsel and their advice and everything was like, oh my gosh, yeah, everything they say is like doctrine for me. So I was just trying to express how, you know, like, what would their answer be? And they just kind of got really defensive, and I felt like I did it. I asked the question in a very polite, respectful way, but it was my genuine question. So anyway, then, you know, I called Sean and talked to him about it, and I was feeling like really worked up, like shaky, even after the conversation ended, because we kind of had to end the conversation abruptly because it was only like a lunch break. So then they had to come back on and say, okay, now we're ready to start up again. So anyway, did I mention that this was on Zoom? Obviously, it was an online conference. So I just kind of, Sean and I wanted to kind of discuss some of our understandings around, I guess, what we've observed by having conversations with Mormons, and when we kind of question their beliefs and their reaction to it.
Yeah. Show me your license plate.
Oh yeah, we wanted to show you, in case you guys didn't see. This is actually on my car right now. Sean got it and just put it on my car.
That's
so I'm
cool.
driving a car around Utah right now that says Post Mo.
Post Malone
Thank
fan.
you, Sean.
She's a Post Malone
Yeah,
fan.
so they can take it either way. I'm either a Post Mormon or a Post Malone fan, right?
You're both.
Yeah, I'm both.
Tell them, you didn't quite mention how robotic those people.
Okay, yeah. So some of their responses were, well, I wrote them down because I didn't want to forget. I was just like blown away with their responses, and I almost wanted to puke at some of the robotic responses that mainly this one guy had. And his book topic was something about like, why would you not become Mormon? And he said, did you have any, because I told them, you know, I was in the church my whole life. I raised my kids in the church, and I went on a mission and everything. And he's like, well, let me ask you something. Did you have spiritual experiences on your mission, like faith-building experiences? And I was just like, yeah, but that was before I learned about the brain and cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias and the fact that we create our own reality with our minds. So of course, at that time, I was seeking any and all evidence to prove my beliefs true. So I was just, and he just kind of, oh my gosh, his response was the worst for me personally, because he started to just repeat things that I was taught to say my entire life. You know, we get up at the pulpit, bear our testimony, and he was saying things in such a robotic way that it just kind of, I couldn't help but say, you know what, like even your response to me is very robotic, and it's almost like you're just repeating what you've been told to say your entire life. And I know this because it's from my own experience. I said things all the time just the way you're saying it, and it was always just repeating what I was taught to say. And so it didn't feel genuine or authentic. And then I think that they kind of other people started to chime in and wanted to attack me. And I was just saying how I don't agree that the Mormon Church can say that they are the one and only true religion on the face of the earth. Like, I was just expressing the fact that I feel like that's very disrespectful, and how could you deny other people their belief in their truth? And then, you know, one woman was like, well, what do you believe about Jesus then? And I was just like, well, you know, to be honest,
you're like, that's a loaded question.
yeah. And I'm like, well, you know, I believe he was just a good man. I can't really get behind the whole fact that he died for our sins.
That's a timer.
On mine or yours? Oh,
on mine. And next time it goes, we have to open it and push stop.
Okay. So, yeah, so I just expressed what I really thought about Jesus, and I don't think they like that. And it was kind of annoying because every time they said, you know, I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like they had to say the whole thing. I'm like, oh my God, like, can you just say Mormon? And then one girl asked really, like, in a mean tone, like, Crystal, can I ask you something? I said, yeah. Are you married? Yeah. Okay, so would you say that your husband is the greatest man on earth?
Hell yes.
I'm like, yeah. And she's like, but I was like, but I don't see how that's a good comparison, because that makes no sense for me to compare the fact that I love my husband. I'm not going out and preaching on social media and all over the world that my husband is the best guy on the earth, and it's too bad that you didn't marry him, because you know, it's kind of like saying that your marriage is doomed to fail because you're not married to him. And like, I'm not going out there saying like I am the one who has the one and only good man on the earth. And they just didn't like my response, but because they just started to become more aggressive towards me. And then I had a few people even reach out afterwards and say, I'm so sorry that people were attacking you, because I was genuinely just expressing my questions and concerns. I was not being disrespectful. I felt like I should be allowed to ask those questions or share my experience, but I guess you should not do that around Mormons. Like, you're not allowed to have your own experience or beliefs. And then, oh yeah, the one guy, he's like, so did you have these, you know, like, he was going on and on about his testimony, like just saying it word for word the way I've heard my entire life. I know this is the true church. I know we have prophets that speak to us today. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like,
yeah, let's hear your Peter Priesthood voice.
Yeah.
Let's hear you bear your testimony.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I was just saying that, well, you know, I feel, how is it that I can feel so much passion and almost like this is my calling in a way to do what I'm doing. So he's saying like you can only get that in the church, but I'm like, but wait, I'm feeling like the feelings that you're talking about being in the church, like I'm feeling that being out of the church. So how does so make sense of that?
Yeah, no kidding.
So yeah.
So you got a little bit of post-mo trash talking going on yesterday. You had a little Bible bash session.
Yeah.
I was telling Crystal, those really never go anywhere, but it's good. I mean, it's good for Crystal to feel like she can go there. Like, I think that's awesome. You know, they'll say, well, you need to respect our beliefs, but they're stuffing Mormon crap down our throats all day, every day online.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with challenging people's beliefs. I mean, Sean even does that to me all the time, and you know, in the beginning I would get really annoyed and defensive, but now I'm learning that it's okay to challenge people's beliefs. Like, it's actually a really good thing. So they shouldn't be so upset necessarily, and it's okay for people to have their own questions and experiences and concerns regarding all of the beliefs. Oh yeah, and then I did mention like the LGBT podcast anyway.
Oh, it's still there.
Oh, okay, we're here. All right, so what are some
oh gosh, you know, I made a list. This is how I prepare with like these random thoughts and they're all just like scribbled on here. So the first thing I thought of, Crystal and I were just discussing all of this, and I was thinking to myself, how is it that Mormon people who appear to be intelligent, who, you know, are educated, how is it that they are able to suspend their critical thinking and turn into these robots, turn into these people that just they say the same bullshit, and they don't see what we see, and they don't hear what we hear. They can't see it. And so I've got a list of things here. I'll just touch on one at a time. If that's okay. You can chime in as much as you want, but no.
Wait, really fast. That just reminded me of, I used to, one of my first jobs was a telemarketer, and we had scripts, and anytime, also we had like rebuttals, a selection of rebuttals, so we could push a button on any of the response, like, well, if they had a question about it being too expensive, any of the concerns, that they had and they posed, like, I could just push a button and it would give me another script of a response. And that's what I felt like I was getting from this one man. He's like, I said one thing, he's like, oh, there's my rebuttal. I push the button and I read the script. So it just felt, so robotic. Like there was nothing, no passion, nothing authentic or genuine there. It was just like, oh yeah, when people say this is what I'm supposed to say.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally get that. Okay, so number one, the thought that we had around this was, I think that people know inherently that they have this network. So I always like to ask myself in any situation, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. Where does the money go? And if you are ever confused about something, if you're ever confused about people's intentions, if you ever, oftentimes the majority of the time, if you'll just follow the money, usually money is the motivating factor. So in the case of someone who's defending the church, let's just a couple things about money that might be causing them to, to suspend their critical thinking. One of those being the network. A lot of people in the church, a lot of men, they view the church as kind of like a business network. You ever heard of BNI? They kind of view it as like a business network international community where, I refer people to so-and-so, he's the realtor, and he refers people to me, and I'm the dentist, and they refer people to that guy, he's the builder, and everybody's passing referrals around, and this is very commonplace. You guys all know this is true. Am I talking too loud?
It's just loud, but I'm just trying to keep our voices like similar.
All right. Okay. So with that in mind, people, at a subconscious level, they don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose those referrals. And I know that people in general have a low self-esteem overall. The majority of us have a low self-esteem. We're not confident. We don't believe in ourselves, not entirely. That's why so many of the most arrogant, egotistical assholes in the world, they have huge followings because people are just like, how did they do it? How could they be so brave and so honest? And so, even Donald Trump can be an ass, total asshat. And sorry if you guys are Trumpers, but, if you just go back and look at some of the things he said about himself and how smart he is, it's atrocious. And yet you look up to him for it. This isn't political, but I'm just making a point that there you have it. I've always said the same thing about Ellen DeGeneres. She got away with so much, and I couldn't believe the arrogance, the narcissism that someone can get away with. I can't believe it. But all of us little people are looking at them going, wow, how did they get away with that? That's amazing. I envy them. But I wouldn't envy that. But bottom line is we are insecure by nature. Naturally, we're insecure, and we feel as though we don't got it. How many of you on this could actually say, I've got it. I've got what it takes to be wildly successful at life and marriage and parenting? The majority, I am at a deficit. And that's the honest truth. So the other thing is a fall net. I think a lot of people at a subconscious level, Crystal, they actually believe that in the event that because they're weak, because they're frail, because they're insecure, because they're vulnerable, they view the church as this fall net. They view the church as they're going to save me if all else fails. If I lose my job, if I lose everything, if I'm hurting, if I have a medical problem, if my husband, my wife was to pass away, I've got this fall net. It's not even about the religion, but this is at a subconscious level. And I'm just trying to understand why they justify their suspension of critical thinking. Well, it's a lot of things. Another thing is the esteem. A lot of these people who you look at and you go, wait, if they believe it, surely it's got to be true because they're very smart. They're very admirable. I really look up to them. But you don't realize that these are people who they really love that esteem. They love it. They eat it up, especially people in leadership positions. They just love being viewed as the spiritual person in the tribe. Everybody in the neighborhood thinking, oh my gosh, brother so-and-so is so spiritual. Sister so-and-so is so amazing. She's so spiritual. That's why she was called to be the Relief Society president. They're not going to give up that esteem. They don't get that a lot in life. It's so meaningful to them. True? Mm-hmm. You agree?
Yeah.
So it's the identity. They form an identity around that. When you've had that identity your whole life, like a patriarch, like even just the patriarch of a family, when you've had that your whole life and everybody's looking to you for answers, you get to call on everybody who gets to pray, you're that spiritual leader. I always look at the Mormon church as a men's club. It's a men's club that props up men. And men get to be the leaders of their families, and they're supposed to be honored and revered, and they're not supposed to be questioned, and women have to go through men to get to God and all this stuff. So men aren't going to give up that esteem. Why would they? Why would they give that up? The church teaches women to stay home. The church teaches women to be homemakers. The church teaches women they don't need careers. Why would men give that up? It serves them. If you have an egotistical misogynistic asshole of a man, he loves it. What else, Crystal? Here we go. It's scary to be alone,
Oh, yeah. And that's what I was kind of, and by the way, the whole reason why we're doing this is not necessarily to continue to bash Mormons, although it does feel good at sometimes. But we are trying to really do it with the approach of understanding and just being observant. Why, I guess it's more like the fascination around human behavior that kind of wants us to dissect it all. What has caused this? Why do people do this? And so that's kind of our whole purpose around it. And it is all just very interesting. I think we can learn a lot as we are aware of human behavior and how the brain works and all of that. So, and it really does tie into survival if you do consider us to be once animals, and the fact that we are programmed to survive. When it comes to our survival instincts, being cast out of the group or the tribe or being alone in any way is like death. So I think there's a survival instinct part of us that, can't even fathom going on our own path, stepping away from the tribe and the group. And so that's why it's so scary, and people do tend to get really defensive because it's like, this is my survival we're talking about here. I am never going to leave my tribe. That means death.
And there's a lifetime of programming there. So there's a lifetime of programming where people, from the time they were kids, they go to school, they're told what to do, they're told when to show up, they're told how long they have to stay there, they're told when they can have a break, they're told they have to raise their hands, they're told to participate. And then they move on to middle school, junior high, high school. It's all the same, moving them into college, all very structured and programmed. And then it's moving them into a job. And the reality is that even a job, there's usually a hierarchy. You answer to someone, you're part of something bigger. Not many people are willing to go off on their own. It's scary. It's intimidating. Most people wouldn't even... Not only would they be too afraid to do it, they wouldn't know how. They wouldn't even fathom it. It's like going off. It's like being in a village where you have, utilities, and you have, you've got the strength of the village, the army, you've got the king, and you've got the rules and the law, and then you look out and it's like, who would choose to go off and be alone in the wilderness? Who chooses that? But see, the way it's taught to us in Mormonism essentially is you are going off into the wilderness. They treat the rest of the world as if it is the wilderness, that it's scary, that
you'll be lost,
that it's unknown,
alone. Yeah. So
all of this comes into play, and you just have to say to yourself, what can we do about it? Well, first thing is to be aware of it. You're not going to get them to see things the way you see things. All of this comes into play when Crystal's talking about confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance. It all comes into play. All these little tiny factors come into play. Even just the simple factor of people don't like to be wrong. Have you ever met someone and under no circumstances will they ever be wrong. And you could like call them out on something. No, I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw you do this. And have you ever seen how evasive they are? Have you ever seen how they will just look at you straight-faced, lie through their teeth to get away with something, and you're sitting there going, why? Why can't you just be honest? Mormons do it all the time. And that's just, again, part of being human. It's unfortunate, but it's part of being human. The way that they cling to this, our prophets would never lead us astray, even though the prophets have repeatedly done so and made horrible mistakes and horrible decisions. And so they say the prophets would never lead us astray. We can trust the prophets. But then when the prophets do make mistakes, they say, well, they're only men.
Yeah.
I follow the doctrine.
I know. That's
they're
what they
only
were
men.
trying to say yesterday. I'm like, well, then how are you supposed to trust them if they're only men, yet at the same time they're called of God? So that just makes no sense. But, there is a part of me that can understand and has some compassion for the fear that comes from, not having certain beliefs that, make you feel comfortable and good and safe. And because I do, like this, being out of the religion and, having all your beliefs being wiped out from underneath you, it is very, very uncomfortable. It is not always fun. It's more, I guess, exciting and interesting to me, but it's very scary at the same time. So I can understand on some level the intense fear that comes up within them, and they don't even realize what it is. But it's like, no, don't question something that feels very safe and secure to me. But to me, I'd rather grow than be comfortable. There is a level of comfort with those beliefs, but there is no growth in comfort.
Oh, keep going, yeah.
No, that's just kind of like what I'm trying to understand. When I'm trying to have compassion for Mormons, that makes me feel better, because I can understand that, yeah, it's not fun to remove the beliefs and then have to start all over and have no answers. And, that's my least favorite part of it, but I wouldn't change it. I still would prefer to be where I'm at now than to feel stagnant and put into this little tiny box that, you can't see anything else. It's just so much more beautiful to be able to see more and to explore more.
So last thing I wanted to talk about was that conversation with my father.
Yeah.
I want to be open with people, and I want our Me family to feel like, we open up and that we open up to one another. And a lot of people are. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful. And we don't have to agree. Oh my gosh. All I did was barely touch that.
You gotta make sure that your timer's not on next time we do that.
Yeah, that's annoying. Sorry, guys. Okay, so Crystal fixed that. But with that in mind, Crystal was talking to a friend out front. My father happened to be there in the driveway, and came up something about death, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. Yeah. And so my father made the mistake. He went on autopilot. We have to give them some grace because they do go on autopilot. He went on autopilot and said, oh, well, I know Randy had an out-of-body experience. Now, he knows that I know that, and I've told Crystal that, my mom claims that she had an out-of-body experience when she was giving birth to her first daughter. And at that time, that's when she realized that's when she had the answer to her prayer about the truthfulness of the church. She loads it up even more because she says she took the discussion 6 times. 6 times. So surely she did her work, right? Well, I know that's probably not true because I know my mom. My mom doesn't even read.
She's not one to sit down and listen to a lesson.
No, but she's a wonderful person.
Mm-hmm.
My mom is a wonderful person with a very big heart. She's also a very faith-filled person. And I almost feel like people like that. A lot of the Idaho Mormons, I found something fascinating. I was watching that documentary, and it was kind of like Abducted in Plain Sight, and there was another one, and I've gotten familiar with some Idaho, people from Idaho Mormons. I'm from Salt Lake, and I just see in these Idaho Mormons this innocence. It's just like they're so sweet, but they're so vulnerable. they can be taken advantage of so easily. And that's how I view my own mom. She's sweet like that. Bottom line is, Dad accidentally brought it up, and then to kind of not go there entirely, he just said, well, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. We had a very special spiritual experience. It was very sacred to us, but we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that.
And it triggered me.
Well, then Crystal came to me and told me it triggered her. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, my mom claims, this is, here's the thing, go on YouTube and type in anything, Scientology, Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventist, type in any of them, and there's people that'll claim that they have had an out-of-body experience, and that's how they know their religion is true. So it's just absurd, but I did go over to my father's house for the specific intent of setting that straight, and I was also triggered. I sat down with him and I said, Dad, listen to me. I know that you may not think that I'm still charged towards the church.
Because you haven't said much lately.
Publicly.
Like you've kind of taken a step back from publicly talking about church-related stuff.
It wasn't healthy for me to stay in that space. I was there for 2 years. I couldn't stay there anymore because it was limiting my progress, my personal progress. Mm-hmm. Personal progress. Heard that before. But bottom line was, I said, Dad, I need you to be, I do need you to be aware that things like that are very triggering for us. I don't want you to insinuate that the church is true because Mom had some out-of-body experience. And I went on to tell him why I think that's bullshit. And I also went on to tell him how I actually still feel about the church, and that I hope he doesn't mistake, my suspension of, public onslaught, if you will, as me not having those hard, strong feelings anymore. He proceeded to tell me that he would love to have a debate sometime about why the church is true, and I could share information with him. He could share it with me. He went on to tell me that he has read everything that I've read entirely. I disagreed. I said that couldn't be true because I spent 8 straight months of my life reading everything there was about Mormonism. I said, there's no way I know you. All you do is watch Fox News. You're not reading this stuff.
And of course, he'll read the questions and disbeliefs that people have around the church. He's only reading, most likely he's only reading the apologetics responses. Yeah. So it's like, of course, like he's going to have an answer. Like they're really good at constructing stories to make everything fit. That's the part of, it's their gift.
True. So anyway, I challenged him. I said, you know everything I know? And then I said, how many wives did Joseph Smith have? And he didn't know. I said, how many underage brides did he marry? And he didn't know. And then I said, how many times did he marry other people's wives? And he didn't know the answer to that one either. And so it got a little awkward because then I started to get a little flustered, and I said, see what I'm saying? Like, you sit there and you act like you know everything I know, but you don't. You don't, because you haven't done the research. You're just doing all this biased research. And then it started to get a little bit ugly on my part because I stood up and started saying, Jehovah, Elohim, I'm here with my father, the priesthood holder. I don't believe in you. Strike me down. And, again, at that moment in time, it wasn't like I lost my temper, but it was like, I need my father to know how absurd I think it all is. I really want him to know how absurd I think it all is. We ended that conversation, and it was fine. Everything was fine. But the bottom line was, it was like, they forget. It's interesting. They mistake our, here we are, we have that flare-up post-Mormonism. We all do. We have that flare-up, varying degrees. Yeah. And then we start to normalize and balance out, and they will mistake that as, we've even had people say, well, you'll probably come back to the church.
Yeah, my conversation yesterday with all those Mormons they were insinuating that I'm probably just going through a midlife crisis or a phase, and I'll probably end up back in the church.
So at this point, I just look at it all and I think how absurd. And you know what? I really don't have time to talk about doctrine anymore. In fact, he said, well, come on, let's sit down and talk about it. And I said, Dad, it's not that I'm afraid to. It's not that I don't care about you, but it's your journey, and I don't have any more of my life to give to that now. Mm-hmm. In fact, the only reason we're doing what we're doing right now is because we feel called, based on being 3 years out now, and this will be an ongoing thing, but we feel called to help the people who are just first coming out. Why? Because we know how ugly that can be, mm-hmm. and we know how scary that can be, and we know how lonely that can be, and how confusing that can be. We've almost got divorced several times. It has been nuts, just crazy. Mm-hmm. And so we feel called to, and that's the one thing I wanted to mention, like post-Mormons, I really do love post-Mormons, because post-Mormons, not only are they extremely tolerant, but they actually genuinely care. That's what's been really interesting to see, is how many people actually genuinely care. The sincere love and the sincere concern and the sincere camaraderie. I'm crazy about our tribe.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I wanted to kind of go back to explain what I believe now, as far as, your mom having her out-of-body experience, to make sense of that, because for a while I had a hard time making sense of, all these spiritual experiences that people claim that they've had, and I just like don't want to discount that. But I did actually recently watch John DeLynne's on the 3 questions. You did that about your story, and John did that like a year ago, but his video popped up. I never saw it until just today. But it was really, I loved his response, and that's kind of how I would describe it. Mormons, they just take all of those awesome, amazing experiences and they give it to the church. They give credit to the church. And, mm-hmm. And to me, it's like, well, and John mentioned this, like, well, I could feel those feelings watching a movie. I could feel those feelings being, out in nature. So he said, the only problem I have around, people with these spiritual experiences, he's like saying, I'm not trying to diminish that or take that away from anybody. It's more so just removing the fact that because you had these spiritual experiences, that proves that the church is true. And that's kind of how I feel around your mom's experience. It's not that I don't believe that she had an out-of-body experience. It's just, I don't believe that that was her sign to confirm that the church is true. And, maybe it just feels best for her journey, her path, to be in the church. And that's where Sean and I are trying to get to a place where we can just accept that. And that's been really hard, but we understand.
Oh my God, so many things come. Here's things people don't think about. My mom and dad move here from Arizona. My mom, at 18 years old, leaves her entire family, and my dad drags her to Utah. Where back in 68, whatever it was, Utah, Salt Lake was even more predominant Mormon. How would you feel if you moved to Utah in 1968 and you're living in a suburb in, Holiday, Utah, and everyone's Mormon? Everywhere you look, it's all you can see, it's all you know. Do you think you might feel a little bit left out? Is there motivation to cave? Is there motivation to have that prayer answered so that you do fit in, so that you do belong? Yeah. Like, it's so obvious, human nature, once you just look at it.
Belonging and fitting in is a huge motivation for us, even down to survival. So yeah. But
don't judge my parents. Good people. Every now and then I look at them and I go, how are you Mormon? Like, you don't think Mormon in so many ways. You don't behave Mormon in so many ways. But then every now and then I see the Mormon and I'm like, oh, don't like it. Get it out of there. Like, yuck.
Yeah.
And so, but my parents they've spent how many years? 30 years now being indoctrinated all the time.
Yeah. And when you talk about, using the logical and sense part of your brain to me, I'm like, well, having a debate with your dad around the historical facts really, it's of no interest to you, obviously, anymore. And to me, that's never really been the part of the church that has bothered me. Like, I could care less about the historical facts and what Joseph Smith did and all that. I mean, that's just like confirmation for me that, oh, okay, I'm making the right choice. But to me, in the beginning, it was just more so about all the ethics around the church, like starting to question, like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel like something God would do or say or command. So for me, if I just use my critical thinking and think logical about the things that the church is asking the people, its members, to do, and being so rigid, and obedience being this like big, huge thing that they promote, it just makes more sense to me that can't be right. That can't be healthy for us as the human race to thrive, because we're only continuing to separate ourselves and put ourselves above others, and to diminish our own inner knowing and intuition, because all we're taught our entire life is obedience. Yeah. So we're being obedient to somebody else other than, learning how to listen to ourselves.
You know what's funny, real quick? Gina, I can't remember how to say her last name, but Gina in the group, she posted a little funny meme today, and it was yesterday, and she posted, it said, my religion taught me that not drinking coffee was more important than being kind to gay people.
Yeah.
And it's just
so
it's
like
hilarious.
Obvious to
like
me.
it's
like
just,
that's not something from God.
It's just so it's just an absolute joke. But I want to say that keep the memes coming and all that too, because what's funny is if you go on Instagram and all those different memes and you'll see all these millennial Mormons. They're liking all of the memes. They're making fun of their own religion. It's hilarious. Yeah. They go on Sundays. They claim to be, card-carrying, temple recommend holding members, but they're the ones poking fun at the church all the time. It is getting better. On a positive note, we all have these little battles, and some people have hard battles. Some of you guys are in families that are just unfair. It's not right. It's unfair, and I'm sorry that that's the card you were dealt. The hand you were dealt is not right, and it's not fair, and you're fighting an uphill battle, and I'm so sorry for that. I've had it so much better compared to so many others. Be brave, keep standing tall, and reach out to people like us if you need, friendship, or you need someone to vent to, or get in the group and really just open up. And I think you'll find you can fill those needs in other ways. Mm-hmm. But it's getting better. I was telling Crystal, it's the weirdest thing. I keep bumping into really active Mormons lately in our community, and they're way nicer to me than they ever were when I was a Mormon. And I'm just like, what is that? And I don't feel like they're doing missionary work. They know what I am, but it just feels as though they've accepted, that we're out. Mm-hmm. And, maybe that's direction coming from the top, that, they need to be more tolerant. Good. Yeah. They do. Yeah. They do. Things need to change for the better. And if people want to go to their death being Mormon, a lot more is going to have to change. Yeah. For the better. Mm-hmm. So we encourage that. We support that. I used to say, no, if it's fake, it's fraud. If it's false, it's fraud. Just burn it. Yeah. But, now I see that, no, there's social structures there. There's heritage there. I went on a mission. My son went on a mission. His son went on a mission. And all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And, there's just a lot of layers there. But it will continue to change for the better. Just imagine when people our age are in power. Yeah. Imagine when the millennials are in power. Yeah. It won't even be recognizable. Yeah. And that's going to be all coming from people like us and you making that change. Yeah, I don't think that we need to get, be deliberate about getting in heated debates. And that was not really my intention yesterday. And I don't think that's your intention either now. But I also don't believe that we should be silent about things that are, really important and meaningful to us. They want us to be silent while they get to preach their truth. So I just think that we can continue to speak up and share our, things that are important to us, but also practice tolerance on our end as well, because that's hard, because I feel like I've flopped over to the other side, but still took my Mormon mentality with me, meaning
everybody needs to be doing it this way, you know. So I know I do that and I judge, but I'm working on that. But I still find it really interesting to analyze and really understand human behavior, and you know, when it comes to religion and beliefs and all of that too. It's really interesting.
The future's bright.
Yes.
The future's bright, and
it's fun to have this community, people that we can like talk about these things with, talk openly about, and I don't know, feels like we're learning and growing and all of it together.
We might have also learned this passive aggressiveness in Mormonism.
Yeah.
I hope they don't scratch our car.
They won't. It's not Christ-like.
Okay, we're out.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Love you guys.